Hello, guys. So, what I wanted to show you today is a spreadsheet that I actually compiled over the last 2 days about the Generation 1 Rainbow Brite Mattel collection. And what I did was I pulled together a bunch of brochures, booklets that I found on rainbowbrite.co. And it's a tremendous resource because uh, Renee actually has a bunch of scans of each of the color kids and their various booklets, along with later releases from Generation 1. And what I did here was I broke them up into sort of dates of release. So there's these are all Generation 1, so they'll all say the same thing. But this is what I call Series 1A, which started in the middle of 1984, and then towards the end of 1984, there was a quick burst of an additional release of Indigo and Starlight Plush. And then the next year, they introduced more color kits in Series 2 in 1985 with the release of Lala Orange, Buddy Blue, and Shy Violet, along with a bigger Lurky doll, because there was a smaller plush Lurky doll that came out the year before. So, and then subsequent to 1985, there was the final release of this, I call it the vintage era of Rainbow Brite Mattel collection, with the dress-up dolls and then the hard-body horses here. There's a rich history of basically all of the sprites that are associated with the Rainbow Brite collection. Basically, in Series 1A, in Generation 1, we started off with 5 of the boy sprites: Twink, Romeo, Spark, Lucky, and Champ. And then in Series 2, we finally got OJ, which is Lala Orange's boy sprite. And then Mattel started releasing a bunch of female sprites as well. And the thing that is interesting here is that they released Posy and Glee, which are Indigo and Shy Violet's equivalent sprites, because Hammy and IQ were never released as a larger sprite. The thing that I think is super interesting, and that's what this the ID number of each associated toy is so interesting, is that and even though there wasn't a Buddy Blue doll, they actually released the plush Champ sprite as a Series 1A plush. Because Buddy Blue didn't come out until the year after. But the thing that's kind of interesting is that if you watch the first episode of Rainbow Brite, Peril in the Pits, we see that Buddy was a background character at the end of the episode. And if you look at the ID numbers, you see that Buddy's number, 7238, is actually pretty in sync with a bunch of these initial first release 9-inch dolls. It's 2 after Patio Green's 7236, but it is a worlds earlier than Indigo's, which is 7549, even though Indigo was released earlier than Buddy Blue, which I thought it was interesting that Champ was released with the initial sprites and Hammy was never released at all. And you begin to notice that there are some gaps in the numbering of these dolls, right? So Buddy Blue, for example, 7238, and Patio Green 7236. What is 7237? Was there another prototype of a color kit that was not yet developed? I know that there's very little, I guess, connection between the cartoon and Mattel release of these dolls, but I wonder whether or not there was another doll um, that was contemplated. I do know that initially Buddy Blue's character was originally conceptualized by Gigi Santiago, a illustrator, to be a female character. So I'm not saying that 7237 was Blue Moon, the female equivalent of Buddy, but I do have a custom of Blue Moon, and she's just precious. Um, as we uh, go on here to look at, I should note that there was an 18-inch Rainbow Brite doll that was actually numbered first. It's like one of the lowest numbers in the generation one. So they probably thought if this was the gating item for a lot of children, the larger 18-inch Rainbow Brite doll. One thing to note is that they released Patio Green the next year, around just in time for the Christmas season, the holiday season of 1985. And the sequence of Patio Green is immediately followed by Baby Bright, but you noticed that Shy Violet has a significantly later numbering. This could be a number of reasons. I shouldn't obsess about the numbering, but I am because I'm interested in it. One thing that you'll see is that Shy Violet, the larger 18-inch doll, never was just depicted in any of the booklets that come with the boxes. I do believe that so that suggests to me that the Shy Violet was a later release, even from these other dolls. I know that Mattel actually created a whole television commercial that spotlighted the 18-inch Shy Violet doll, which had these beautiful pastel, whimsical colors. If you have the time, you should check out that commercial because I love it. Um, the Series 2 release also has um, all of the female sprites that I already talked about. The thing that I think is interesting is the numbering again jumps from Spritzy, the light blue female sprite, and Delight, the light pink female sprite, 9133 to 9135. Everything else in these four right here, from Merrily to Flutter, is in sequence. So my conjecture is 9134 could be a red female sprite, because we did see that there was a adorable red female sprite in, I believe, Star Sprinkled, the episode in the series. But again, there's very little connection between what Mattel decides to create and the animated series. We see that in the departure in the way that a couple of the dress-up dolls look. Like Moonglow looks very, very different from her doll and the character that actually came on our screens in 1987, 1986, in the episode Rainbow Night. Stormy, the doll, which was never produced. We only have pictures of the prototype and allegedly a prototype out there. She looks remarkably different than the Stormy that we saw in the Star Stealer movie, and significantly different than what we saw in the series. There's I guess, a two-flap dress. There's lighter lavender hair. The colors are very different. There's more of an emphasis on this dark green and the more rich purples. So it's not to say that there's a direct correlation, but I do think that there might have been the possibility of a red female sprite that is conceptualized with these female sprites, because all of the original color kids have an equivalent male and female sprite, except for Romeo and Lala. But that is attributed to the fact that OJ was released significantly later than the other boy sprites. So just something that I observed. And then there's also a bunch of hatful mini sprites. I feel like these are not as popular or weren't as popular as the larger sprites in the United States, but still, I just wanted to be as comprehensive with the world of Rainbow Brite as possible. And the last thing I'll touch on just really quickly here is that I have this like crazy obsession with the dress-up dolls that came out in 1986, a little bit in 1987. Um, Primarily for the fact that there's a lot of mystery that surrounds these four dolls. Tickle Pink is was released worldwide, and I guess in less numbers than the other color kids. So finding her mint in box or in a box is super rare. Same with the dress up Rainbow Bright doll. One of the things I'll discuss later is this rainbow hair clip. Um, I believe that there's different manufacturing based on the geography of the factory, which is why there's different levels of thickness in the rainbow hair clip. I think the European version versus the American version are slightly different. And my favorite doll, and one that I have loose, actually have several loose, is the 9-inch Moonglow doll. And she was only released in Germany. I think her name, and I don't speak German, Sandra Superman is the name in Germany, and she's found exclusively, or she was only produced and sold in Germany, but in the early 90s, early 2000s, it was really the early 2000s when fan message forums started discovering Moonglow, if they, especially in the American population, and they would sell um, quite exorbitantly on eBay. They're still quite expensive and they're still rare, but with a more interconnected World Wide Web, it's easier to find a Moonglow now than it has ever been. But I got my first Moonglow loose through my friend Rosa in Spain, who helped me navigate the streets of Germany um, on the internet to get me a Moonglow, which I love. And the Stormy was never released. It was only shown in pictures. Um, and a lot of fans create custom dolls of Stormy trying to recreate this look. So the hardest doll I think to get mint in box is Moonglow. To my understanding, there's only three Moonglows in the original Sandra Silberman Mattel box. One is was purchased by Katie at rainbowbrite.net. The other is purchased by someone named Ronnie, who's a acquaintance of mine that I met through the forums. He has an extensive collection. I think he got that from a collector who sold his dolls to a French toy store in Paris. I think he was from Belgium. And to my knowledge, based on some conversations with Renee of rainbowbrite.co, the third Moonglow inbox might be from someone in Italy. It came across on a fan page in about a decade ago. And there hasn't been a Stormy prototype that is 100% authenticated and claimed. In the early 2010s, there was a loose doll that was allegedly found around the Hawthorne, California area, and the person who has it claims to have a authentic prototype doll. And some analyses were done with the face paint, and a lot of people, including experts in the Rainbow Brite doll collecting world, believes that it's an authentic prototype. I am still on the fence about it, but for the most part, Stormy and the custom creation world is something that I think is super fascinating because it shows how fanatical the Rainbow Brite community is. And then we have a bunch of pets. We have Starlight, the hard body Starlight, which is way more coveted, especially in box. Um, and then Sunriser, Tickled Pink's horse, also in hard body. It has this like flocking on the surface, which I think is super interesting. And one of my favorite pets, I do have a loose plush of this, is the Kitty Bright. To be honest, I'm not exactly sure about the release of Kitty Bright. She wasn't depicted in a lot of the catalogs and brochures until the World of Rainbow Bright pamphlet came out, and I saw her inclusion with a bunch of the dress-up dolls. So I assume that it's definitely later than Series 1A and 1B, but I don't know whether it's a Series 2 or a Series 3. But I just thought this was super helpful, and to give you the state of affairs. I have checked off the female and the male sprites that I do have. They're loose, they're not in box. I do have a loose, let me check, Kitty Bright, there, a loose Kitty Bright, a loose Puppy Bright as well. But the only three in-box Rainbow Bright dolls that I have, I showed you Indigo yesterday, and I showed you my first one, Rainbow Brite, the twin sprite, and I have a Tickled Pink that's coming up. But just wanted to share with you my spreadsheet and how dorky I am. But I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll show you the Tickled Pink when I get it.